Okay, so what we're actually going to be creating today is the crystal wave in our chainmail. So you'll have either the jet or the amethyst options, and you can see that the links themselves are our chainmail design, and then they're embellished with the woven crystals through them. I'm going to show you how to create the bracelet, but actually you can adapt the design and extend the chainmail pattern so that you can create a necklace as well. You could have your crystals waving all the way through. You've got 400 of the bicones within the set, so you can distribute those as you like through them, but you can see that the chainmail obviously gives a really pretty decorative feature on its own, and also it's really simple to create earrings from them as well. So once you've learnt the pattern and how to embellish them, really you can start creating lots of different designs as well. It's a nice simple pattern. We're going to attach our clasp on one end, and you can actually also make an extender chain out of the smaller links in the bracelet as well. And the bracelet can be worn two ways, either with the crystals sat on top or hidden underneath your chainmail as well. So a couple of different ways that it could be worn as well. So let's get started. We've got our 10mm jump rings. You've got 500 of those within the pack. That's your larger one, and 1,000 of your 6mm jump rings. Now you do have a findings kit, so you have your earring findings and your clasps, and also this little tool. Now this is a jump ring opening tool. So it's actually to be worn on your finger or your thumb or your index finger, and you pick up your jump rings, and rather than using a pair of pliers, you can actually insert the jump ring into the slots of the ring and twist to open. So this is how we open a jump ring. We don't pull the circle apart because you'll never return it back to its shape, and you'll also put too much stress on the point of the circle. So we're twisting each one of them open. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of a cheat. You don't actually have to open every single jump ring when you're creating chainmail. So our pattern today is nice and simple. So you want to begin by opening a lot of your smaller jump rings. These are the only ones that we actually need to work with and to open up. So have a little pile of open jump rings so that when you start creating your work, it's actually easy to pick up jump rings that you need to be working with next. So that's a really good point to start at. And I'm going to create a little bit of our chainmail pattern first of all, and then we'll worry about the finer details like adding our clasp and extender chain afterwards. So open up one of your 6mm jump rings, and onto this I'm going to add 6 closed jump rings in my 10mm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just make sure, normally the packs are pretty good and the jump rings are closed completely. However, if you find that there is a little gap in between them, just make sure that they're closed before you attach them onto your work. Now, what I'm actually going to do is now close that smaller jump ring. When you're closing them, you're actually rubbing the sides back together, so you should feel them meet and feel them join. And now I'm going to change hands and hold the smaller jump ring with my left hand whilst I pick up a smaller open jump ring, because I then want to attach them to the 6 larger jump rings that I've already added. So I've now got 2 of my smaller jump rings attached to all 6 of my closed. So you'll see I've worked with 8 jump rings so far, but I've actually only had to work with 2 of them. Now I can split this. So if I take 3 of the larger jump rings and hold them, you'll see that I've already now got 3 links in my chain. So just to show you again, I'm going to take a small open jump ring, and onto this we want to attach 6 of our larger closed jump rings. This time 3 of them are going to come from the links that I've been creating, and 3 of them will come from my materials pile, like so. And then I want to make sure that this closed jump ring is nice and tight. So rubbing those sides together, you'll feel it close nicely. Taking a small open jump ring and now passing it through all 6 that I've just added. And this is going to give me, on each link of my chainmails, 2 smaller jump rings in the centre, and they join together links of my 3 larger jump rings. So you can see it comes together quite quickly. And you continue doing this until you achieve the length for your jewellery that you require. So if we have a look here at the bracelet, you'll see that it's about 12, I think, of the larger jump rings interlinked with smaller ones in between. I'm going to add a couple of smaller ones to attach my clasp onto, and at the other end I've got smaller jump rings as singular links with a little crystal at the end. So I'll show you how to create this little fixture now as well. So take one of your head pins from your findings pack, again all included in your set, and I'm going to add onto them 2 of my rondelle crystals, like so. And then I want to bend the pin to 90 degrees directly above the bead. So I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and just bend that pin directly above the bead. Then I want to take my cutters and leave about 1 centimetre. Now you need 1 centimetre to create a normal sized loop. Like so. And in a moment I'm going to attach that onto the last of my jump rings. So I want to continue to add my jump rings to get the length in my bracelet. So I've got a smaller jump ring. I'm going to add 3 from my closed link, 3 from my closed pile, making sure that I shut that jump ring completely. And then if you find that you haven't got an open jump ring ready to use, this is where your tool comes in really handy, because you can actually wear it. Take one of your closed jump rings. You'll notice that I'm still holding my framework, so I haven't had to put it down and lose my spot. You can open that jump ring, pass it through all 6 of your larger rings, make sure that you get them all in there, and then close that. And I'm going to continue doing this until I achieve the length that I want for my bracelet. Okay, so sizing up your bracelet, just make sure that when you are completing your chainmail, both sides meet, so they're touching at the back of your wrist. I'm going to add my clasp now and a small extender chain as well. So you don't have a lot of room to add your findings. So I find that the best and most comfortable size to have it is so that both of these larger jump rings are touching on your wrist. And I'm going to add a small extender chain on one side so that I've got continuity in my pattern. I'm going to finish with 2 smaller jump rings on the very end, and then adding an extender chain with the small jump rings as well. So I'm going to open my jump ring and attach it to the 2 on the last of my pattern, and then I'm also going to add one of my closed jump rings, again making sure you pick one that has a nice solid closed link, like so. So you'll notice that each time I'm adding jump rings, I don't actually have to open all of them. You can actually limit the amount that you need to open, which of course puts less stress on them as well. So I'm adding 1 from my link and a closed one, and I think that will probably be long enough for an extender chain. That also means that if you are selling your makes or giving them as gifts, that's going to allow the wearer to obviously have the right size for them. So now the little finishing touch on the end, back to our pin that we've cut and left 1 centimetre, I'm going to create a loop on the end of this pin. So take your round nose pliers, a couple of millimetres down from the very top, and make sure that your wire is flush to the top of the pliers as well. And I'm going to roll this pin around the pliers, so nice small movements, and you'll notice that I'm letting go of my grip and readjusting each time. So the smaller the movement, the more control you have over the pin itself, and you'll end up with a lovely loop on the end. So we want to attach this just like opening a jump ring. It's the same with an eye pin. You want to make sure that you twist it open, you're not pulling it apart, and that will add nicely onto my extender chain and just gives a really nice little finish, like so. And at the other end we want to make sure excuse me, we want to make sure that our clasp is attached. So 2 smaller jump rings to finish off the pattern in a nice neat and uniformed way, so I'm keeping the continuity of my pattern here. Now you'll notice I'm not wearing the ring actually, so each time you're adding a jump ring, if you don't have one that's accessible, make sure you've got your ring on, and then it means that you don't have to put down your framework. Now, if you struggle to get your jump rings through all three of them, just open it a little bit further. The wider you open it, the more accessibility you have for linking those together. So I've got 2 jump rings on here. I'm going to add one single one now for my clasp. So clasp onto one end from your findings box, of course included in the kit itself. And that will just give me the finishing touch to my bracelet. Now we want to start adding our crystals. Of course, this is a really nice chainmail pattern on its own, but we just want to embellish it a little bit further. So I'm going to take a length of my tiger tail from my findings box. Now, if you want to make necklaces or you want to embellish this further, you actually need 2 centimeters of tiger tail per large ring that you want to weave your crystals around, and then about 16 centimeters for finishing. So with that rule, remembering that you need 2 centimeters for each large ring and approximately 15-16 centimeters to finish, you'll be able to calculate how much of your tiger tail wire that you need. Now, to act as a stopper on the end, I'm going to add a crimp bead. So that's the smallest bead that you have in your findings boxes. And I'm going to add a faceted bead as well. Sorry, faceted bead first and then your crimp bead. And this is going to act as a stopper for the very end. So you want to then come back through your crimp bead, and you only want to leave a small tail, but you'll see that this crimp bead has now acted as a stopper and will hold that in place. Now, so that I have a nice finish, I'm not going to crimp this bead. I'm going to leave that as it is, and that will be a decorative feature on our bracelet. But I am going to add a second crimp bead, and this will hold our work in place. So make sure that you thread your tail through it, so it's going through both strands. I'm going to cut this tail down because I've left it a little longer, and I then want to crimp that with my flat nose pliers. So you want to basically squash it flat, like so. Now this will be hidden in our chainmail itself in the pattern. So I'm going to now add this onto my bracelet. I'm not going to add it onto my first double links, I'm actually going to add it to the second. And by threading that through, you'll see that the second jump rings actually hide the squashed crimp. So it doesn't actually affect our pattern at all. And for each large jump ring that we now want to weave over, you need 5 of your faceted rondelles. And then we pass our wire through our next link of 2 jump rings, and when you pull that tightly, you'll see that it begins the lovely weave. And I'm just going to hide that tail through my faceted beads so that it's got extra strength and security within there. You only want it to go about through 3 or 4. If needs be, you can cut that little bit excess off to neaten it up. And I'm going to repeat doing this, weaving all the way through. So I'm going to alternate left to right so that we get the lovely woven pattern, and then we'll have a look at how we finish it at the other side. Okay, so we've reached the end because I want it to be my second link of 2 jump rings. So at this point we're going to attach it in exactly the same way we did at the beginning. So I'm going to add a crimp bead. This will be the one that we crimp and we secure. Then I'm going to add one of my faceted, come through the double jump rings. Then I'm going to add one of my faceted beads and the other crimp bead. So this is the one that will act as the stopper. So once I've moved this down, I want to then skip the crimp bead, come back through the faceted bead, back through the second crimp bead, and then also back through, I would say probably 3 of my crystals so that again you have that tail, that extra bit of strength within there, and then we can secure. Now at this point, before we crimp our bead, so it's very finalised and secured, I want to make sure that our tension throughout the piece is correct. So you don't want it too tight because you'll find that it will start to distort some of your jump rings. So you'll actually end up with a very tight weave, which you don't want. Let's just pull this down nicely. So you'll notice that I've made sure there aren't any gaps in any of my beads. So we're secured at one end. You will find as well that your crystals may jump from bottom to top of your weave. If you can, make sure that you've got them all positioned in the same way, which will just make it easier for the tension. You want to make sure that there aren't any gaps, but that you're not pulling it too tightly to distort the weave itself. So I'm just jiggling all of those beads up, and once you're happy with it, secure in place. It's at this point really you want to take time to make sure that you've got it correct, because it really will affect the finished result of your bracelet. So it's worth spending that little bit of time to make sure that you're happy with it. Now my bead is secured and I want to just squeeze through to that second crimp bead so that I can crush that with my pliers. So you're crimping that and that will hide in between our jump rings, and then you can cut off that extra tail, and then you've got a beautiful bracelet that's got your woven crystals all the way through, and hopefully someone will really enjoy receiving it as a gift.